Well, I think that is a very inspiring start to this discussion. You'll see the full link in the chat. If you've missed some part of the video, it's well worth seeing. And it shows the struggle of rank and file workers in the British construction industry over some period, the way in which police spies were used in the unions. The union leadership was often bought out, and the rank and file, fought against blacklisting of workers being excluded after taking strike action. If I could now introduce our speakers, we've got a terrific lineup of speakers here. We've got Roberto Luzzi, who's been organizing the strikes of workers in FEDEX and other monopolies in Italy, and engaged in struggle, which he will explain, but which has been intensely repressed and every trick in the book used against the workers. We've got George Martin, who's a victimized trade union leader at Rossing uranium mine, one of the biggest uranium mines the world has. We've got Joseph Dube. Joseph, or JV, we are so pleased to welcome you. Joseph is the secretary of RETUSA, a revolutionary transport union in the dock sector in South Africa and based in Durban. And he'll be speaking on the struggle to organize the unorganized stevedoring workers. And then we've got Hanna Danilovic, who is an international representative of the workers who are struggling for organization in Belarus under the most horrific conditions at the moment. We are hoping that Valerie Ferguson will be joining us, a victimized transport workers union leader from New Orleans. And we're also hoping that Steve Zelter, who's helped us organize this event, will also be present and able to make a contribution. In order of speakers, I'd like to ask Jacob if you could come in and give us a discussion or lead a report, and maybe with an emphasis on international links we could set up around the organization of stevedoring workers in Durban, and the attempts that we've been making to make an international link of stevedoring workers in struggle from East Coast, West Coast of the United States, in Europe and elsewhere. Joseph, you have a high reputation in the South African labor movement, and we're really looking forward to hearing. Joseph, are you there?
Yes. Hi, comrades. Can you hear me?
There we are. Yes, go ahead, please,
yes.
Joseph.
Okay. Okay. My name is Joseph Striketober. I've been at the helm of organizing transport workers for the last 26 years. I was a former provincial secretary of SADAW in KwaZulu-Natal for almost 20 years. I've been leading transport workers in South Africa, I think, for the rest of my life, for my adult life. And currently, I'm the General Secretary of RETUSA, which is the transport workers organizing dock labors, transport, and other related sectors. What I'd like actually to do today is to speak on the subject of strategy for solidarity, more especially on the dock workers or stevedoring. In South Africa, we've got a number of stevedoring companies, from the Port of Durban, Port of Cape Town, Port of Richards Bay, and other ports, small ports in South Africa. These workers are not organized properly. They've been actually in the strike for I don't know how many years. Some of workers are towards their retirement, and these workers, mostly they are casual workers. They are not enjoying any rights whatsoever. They don't enjoy rights of the heavy pension fund, medical aid, and all other related rights. They are exposed to all kinds of dangers. Some of them will die in the face of duty and are not being paid. What we have done as Retusa, we have organized these particular workers. Currently, we are having plus minus 1,500 of these workers organized by Retusa. We have taken their struggle forward as early as 2017, more especially in Durban, where we are concentrating and dealing with these particular issues. We've led the struggle of these workers on 11th of July 2018. And upon leading that struggle, Transnet at the head of this level happened actually to listen to us as the union Retusa. And we've been engaged with them from 2018. Amongst other issues that we've just gained is to be listened to. We are not yet a recognized union in Transnet, but we've managed to pull out the GCO, which is the General Central Executive Manager of Transnet, to speak to us on these items. And right now, in terms of our campaign, it has just given results of Transnet saying, look, we are looking very closely onto these issues of dock workers or stevedoring workers. Right now, they've given us a platform to engage with them. There are currently two things or resolution that we've agreed upon. The first resolution was that Transnet is considering taking these workers as their fixed term, meaning if they take them as their fixed term, they'll be enjoying the pension fund, they'll be enjoying the provident fund, they'll be enjoying the medical aid, and also they'll be getting a fixed wage, because currently, as we speak, these workers, as they are being employed by different companies, one company will just give them a wage of, let's say, 3,500 per month. One employer will just give 4,500. So it depends from each employer to another employer. So there's no like a fixed kind of wages. So if they manage to be employed by Transnet, they'll be having a fixed rate of a wage of 12,500, will be far much better off, as currently they are just earning next to nothing. And how they operate is that if the vessel has not come for a week, 2 or 3, it means for those parties, they are not earning. So if it means they've just worked for one vessel or another vessel for a full and so forth, so it means they'll be earning a wage of each vessel they've just worked and so forth. So their wages varies. There's no fixed term kind of wages like a living wage. So if they are being taken by Transnet, they will be having a wage of 12,500. That's one. The second issue that we have resolved with Transnet that they are looking at is that Transnet is considering taking these workers and form one company, one conglomerate company, where their period of employment will be extended, because currently they've got a period of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So it depends on Transnet, whatever term they want to give to them. So what has been proposed that has been on the resolution between the Retusa and Transnet right now is that if the tender is given to one company, they will be giving a term of 10 years or above. So meaning they will know exactly that they are working for 10 years, because currently they are not even able to open like accounts in stores and so forth, because they work as when the job is available. So these are some of the things that we've managed to gain in terms of the struggle that we've waged in 2018, 11 July. I want to tell actually the traditional comrades that, that struggle, I think it gave us a respect, it gave us a momentum that we are to be reckoned with. The port of Durban was closed down altogether. There was no operation whatsoever on the 11th of July 2018. This was the struggle that we have set in history. We've made our presence felt by Transnet. In fact, everything transport was the hub of Durban is like a harbor that is distributing, cargo to Johannesburg, into other small towns, in KwaZulu-Natal, in Free State. So the hub of Durban is distributing almost next to 3, if not 4 provinces. In fact, in terms of the GDP of South Africa, it is contributing next to 20% of the South Africa GDP. That's how important it is. Hence, we've concentrated our strategy in Durban, in the Richards Bay. Right now, we are just moving to Cape Town and other provinces. So Retusa right now is having plus minus 4,500 members. And we are gaining momentum to each and every area because of the strategies that we've managed to improve many things, especially the road freight industry, where workers, due to the influx of the people from other countries and so forth, and a lot of people actually from foreign countries has just employed in South Africa. And what has happened, this has caused a struggle between South African workers and the foreign countries, because what employers are doing, they are giving much or more job actually to the foreign nationals and giving almost next to 20 to 30% of the jobs, to South African, because they are saying South African national people are very expensive. So what they are doing, like for instance, if I can make an example of a truck driver. A truck driver, his basic wage is around 8,000 in South Africa, which is being agreed in the council. But when they employ the foreign national drivers from other African countries, they'll give like 3,000, 2,000. At some point, and a wage that is in accordance with the kilometers. So how many kilometers that you have just made, that will be your wage. So if you have worked less kilometers, it means you'll be earning less wage. Whereas in South Africa, you've got actually the road freight council, where there's a statutory rate that wage that has been put in place. What the employers are trying to do is trying to avoid that. We've taken most of the employers through a compliance in the council, and we've managed to have a lot of workers in there, which is being put in place. As you know, there's been a lot of other xenophobia in South Africa and so forth. And we've been speaking actually to our members not to be involved and so forth, because we are dealing with these issues correctly and so forth. So Retusa currently, I can say we are gaining momentum. In the dock workers, we are doing very well. In the road freight sector, we're also doing very well. And other related sectors. We are expanding as we have started in 2016. Retusa was established in 2016. And right now we're in the 5th year. And we are gaining a lot of members in the transport sector. But our members are more freight and dock workers, stevedoring, transnet workers, and we are doing very well. So
okay,
what
Joseph,
like to share? Yes.
I'm so sorry to intervene, but we have to look at time, and we've got other speakers. You will have a chance to come back, and thanks very much for that contribution. And please note any other points you'd like to come back towards the end as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Fantastic. It's marvelous to have a dock workers leader in our discussions, and to know that the struggles of dock workers, which has gone back over the past century, is now moving ahead again. I wonder if I could now ask George Martin to speak. George, we really welcome you. We know you're in a real tough struggle with a government and a corporation which is employing you, who has victimized you, taking every action to stop workers' rights in Namibia. We're very keen to hear you. If you could come on stream now, unmute and speak. You're very welcome.
Thank you, David. Comradely greetings, everyone. Firstly, I want to thank the organizers of the meeting for giving us a slot to tell the world our story and the story of workers in Namibia that have suffered and are suffering the same fate as us through the cruel and vicious companies. My name is George Martin, the branch secretary of the Mine Workers Union, CNNC Rossing Uranium Limited. I speak on behalf of the 9 unlawfully dismissed branch executive members. We want to set the record straight that our fight is not against Chinese people. We have nothing against our Chinese comrades, but our fight is against companies that disrespect and ill-treat workers, companies that are bashing and destroying the unions, and companies that ignore and grossly violate the rule of law. We were voted into office as branch executive committee in October 2017, and again re-elected in 2019, October. Rio Tinto, as a majority shareholder at Rossing Uranium Mine, sold its shares to China National Nuclear Corporation in July 2019. And since then, the Chinese management's agenda was to renegotiate our agreements, and they would write countless letters indicating their intentions of renegotiating our condition of employment. Some, but not a few, our procedural agreement, which is a repetition agreement that was signed on the 14th November 1988, our recruitment policy, of which the company uses to recruit its employees, the performance and conduct procedure, which is our disciplinary code, the retrenchment policy, and they wanted to change our good medical aid provider to a substandard medical provider. These conditions, they wanted to change them to worse off conditions. We did not allow them to change our conditions of employment, as these conditions did not come freely, but our forefathers and the comrades before us fought and sacrificed their lives for the benefit, to benefit us dearly. This frustrated the management, who turned to other forms of abuse, and they threatened to remove the union office, our full-time chairperson's office, our boardroom on site, and just to disable and sabotage union activities, of which we challenged the company legally. On the 29th of September 2020, the management of CNNC Rossing Uranium Limited unlawfully dismissed the 9 of us, an entire organ of the Mine Workers Union of Namibia, in our individual capacities on witch hunt allegations and fabricated charges to get rid of us illegally. We have since filed 2 disputes with the Office of the Labor Commissioner. The first of the 2 disputes is an unfair labor practice case, and the second of the dispute was a unfair dismissal case. Please bear with me, comrades. There is a few that I need to mention so that you understand the dynamic of our case. Number 1, our unfair labor practice case. Our first set down was in November 2020. As we all had individual cases, the arbitrator forced one of our comrades to withdraw the case by forcing him to write a withdrawal letter, telling him that the reason that she cannot grant us the comrade reinstatement, or we let him get his prayers because he was already dismissed. The arbitrator said that the prayers are cannot be granted, and she refused. The comrade refused to withdraw the case. There were also a lot of irregularities on other cases that showed clear signs from the arbitrator that she's being biased, and we requested for a recusal, of which the application was turned down. We consolidated the cases, and it was scheduled for April 2021, and we came to request for a postponement. The arbitrator turned down the postponement, and the next thing we get was the arbitrator dismissed the case, and the case was dismissed following that she cannot grant the prayers that we asked for because we were dismissed. We put in an application for review at the Labor Court. The application was unopposed, but the corrupt judiciary appointed a case management judge to hear the matter, and the set down is on the 2nd of November 2021, of which our representative notified them that we are not going to take part in an illegal process because the case was supposed to be thrown out, or we were supposed to win the case because the company did not oppose the application. The second case, which is the unfair dismissal, our first set down was in December 2020, and the company representative did not make it, and the case was postponed due to unavailability of counsel. The second set down in February 2021, the company representative got sick the day before, which was a Sunday, and the case again was postponed. The third set down was in April 2021 for 3 days. The company appointed new counsel, and he handed in an application to recuse the arbitrator, dismiss the case due to a faulty application from the applicants, and the third was to stay the proceedings. Application was dismissed by the arbitrator, and then the company filed an urgent application to the Labor Court, trying to short-circuit the case. The court ruled in the company's favor on a rule nisi, and the case was stayed. In June 2021, we went to the Labor Court, of which the judge was Collins Parker, and he ruled in our favor, and the case was brought back to arbitration. The case was scheduled for the 27th to the 29th of October 2021 for arbitration. 3 weeks before the company appointed an advocate to their legal team and requested for our bank statements, updated CVs, application for jobs, and all unnecessary documents to show how we mitigated our losses and giving the arbitrator 7 days for making a ruling on what they requested. Our representative responded that the Constitution... Yes,
I'm so sorry. Look, we're a bit out of time now, and the details are very important. Could I suggest, if we've got a file, we'll put it up and circulate it to everybody. I'm sorry to cut, and I really must apologize, but you know, the problem is that we do have this issue of time. We've got 2 other speakers. You will have the chance to come in and comment on the questions and other issues. I'm putting up something now in relation to the struggle that is on the website or the Facebook that comrades can check on further details. But it's an astonishing struggle. The betrayal of the government, the liberation movement and government is absolutely astonishing. And even worse is the behavior of Chinese Communist Party members, you know, who are in the management and carrying out capitalist policies from end to end. Anyway, thank you for that introduction. Could I then ask, sorry?
What I'll do, I'll send a copy of this on the page. Is it okay?
Well, of course, we'll circulate it on the win list, and anyone else who wants to have it who's not on our list, please indicate, and you know, they'll be there. There's so many details which are really important to follow. Unfortunately, we have time in discussion right now.
Thank you, Comrade David.
Okay, thanks, George. I wondered if I could ask Roberto Luzzi to come in and to give us an update on the struggle of the workers in FEDEX and elsewhere in Italy at the moment. Roberto, could you come in?
Hello. I want to thank David for inviting me to the WIN meeting, because it is a network we as SICOVAS, our union, was looking for. And I will also send an appeal we had written a few months ago to unite rank and file unions and groups of combative workers. our union, SICOBAS, is a rank and file union. It has grown from about 100 workers, members, 10 years ago to about 25,000 now, through the use of a strike method, and also with strong strike with pickets blocking warehouses, especially in the logistics sector, even though it is considered illegal by police, and but most times we have been acquitted in courts. And this method, which is very confrontational, has allowed workers in the logistics sector, but also in other sectors, to achieve big improvements in their working conditions, in their wages, more than doubling wages, because before organizing, they were treated like slaves. And we are also naturally an international union, because most of our members are immigrants from about 50 different countries of the world. So internationalism and also anti-racism is in our DNA. Well, David was asking me about the struggle at FEDEX. What happened is that in FEDEX, a majority of workers are, at least in the main warehouses, are organized with the SICOBAS, and they have achieved rather good conditions relative to the sector and also to most manual workers, so that FEDEX bought these warehouses, this network from TNT. It bought the whole TNT group where we organized workers, and now they are trying to dismantle, to destroy the union in order to reduce wages and hire temporary workers. So to introduce precariousness and to be able to dictate their rules in without any conditioning by the union. So what they did, one first action was to close a warehouse where about more than 95% of workers were SICOBAS members, and where they had just fought a battle to achieve improvements, and they had closed it with 272 workers, which have become jobless. And this happened in last May, and these dismissed workers have struggled since by blocking other warehouses where the goods they were dealing now are being handled. So it's a battle that is going on, and in the other warehouses they have stopped managing them through contracting out, and they hired the worker directly, but trying to cut all achievements they had won in struggles, in 10 years of struggle. So we have it's a situation where it will be decided whether a rank and file union can stay inside the FEDEX or it be defeated. And what's interesting is that FEDEX is signing agreements with the official unions and inviting them to and inviting workers to become members of this union. So because these unions are tamed, while in the US they are not letting the Teamsters or any other union organize their members. In Italy, and also Amazon is doing the same trick. They are calling the official unions to organize workers in order to keep combative unions out. So this is, I think, an important fight, and it will be decided by the struggle and not by any negotiations. Well, at the end, we want to have negotiations where they sign workers' rights, but now it is up to the struggle. I don't know, maybe David or anybody else can explain to me when this network, WIN, was set up, and if you have any schedule, because I think that we can collaborate and bring some of the contacts Striketober has into contact with this network in order to become a wider international network of rank and file unions and combative workers. Thank you.
Roberto, that's really inspiring. And, you know, I want to congratulate you on doing a job which is probably one of the most difficult jobs on earth, to organize the unorganized, the undocumented workers of, you know, in advanced capitalist countries. That is a massive job. And you've got not only the employers, the biggest monopolies in the world, but you've also got the official unions, you know, breathing down your neck and giving you every problem. So it's very inspiring to, you know, to get the details. It makes me think back when I organized textile workers who used to make straps for rifles and the rest in South Africa. And as soon as there were many women workers there, and the women workers joined before the men. And when the employer heard this, he says, I'll take my factory and move it to another country. Well, first of all, to another town and then to another country. And I smiled because then I knew we were winning. And you have the same problem. They're starting up warehouses everywhere. Once you organize one, then they want to start it up somewhere else. Anyway, we'll get them. And that's why we're so keen to hear the reports and to be able to make the connections and struggle. On your point about when, I'm going to be asking Roger to come in, not now, but a little later, and to link up all the initiatives that WIN is taking and the way in which we are an open door. We are, you know, open to workers in struggle anywhere, and to those who have all the experiences you have, Roberto. We respect that enormously, and we work on the basis of debate. Let me not say more, because we still have more speakers. Hannah, if I could ask you to come in. Hannah Danuich is you know, an inspiring worker. She has come from Belarus. She's a person who's had close association and is now with the union movement, the independent union movement in Belarus, and is now representing REP, the rep union internationally, and has done an exhaustive work in bringing the news of the Belarusian workers' struggle to the attention of workers internationally, and engaged in every difficult technique for overcoming the difficulties in establishing solidarity between workers' movements in Europe and internationally, and those in Belarus. And as you've had, Roberto, many of the international unions, which are meant to be doing this job, like Industrial and others, are either they're doing nothing or it's a weak hand. You know, it's a hand that you can't, a handshake that you're really not sure if it's a handshake at all, because they're not giving that support. But Hannah's worked relentlessly and has had support from WIN, and we're very pleased to hear of the progress of the unions right now, even under the difficult circumstances they have. Hannah, could you please come in? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, David. Good to see everyone. Has been a while.
Yeah.
Well, what's happening in Belarus right now is that, as you know, in Belarus, the protest movement is divided into sort of two camps. One is being led by independent unions such as REP, and the other led by the people who call themselves a new opposition, and they are more, how to put it politely, opportunistic movement. Well, at the moment, the independent unions are under oppression, and it's not getting any easier, with the members of the union being called to for questioning to the police and the security forces every day. This year we had 3 break-ins into the office where they just smash everything and take the paperwork. They took all the personal data on membership, and that's become quite a regular thing. So the leadership of the union is now doing basically, well, we're trying to move everything that we can onto the cloud, which takes a lot of time, because the IT people who worked with us, some of them left Belarus because of the persecution, and those who were just paid help, well, the union hasn't been able to pay them for the last 6 months because there's just no money coming from anywhere. And so that's another issue that we're trying to fight. So far, unsuccessfully. We applied for a lot of support from international unions. And although on paper, they're very happy to support, especially Industrial, so far, it hasn't materialized. The latest news is that tomorrow, the Association of Belarusian Workers is the new association formed under the auspice of the opportunistic group. They're trying, because they are not inside Belarus, they actually, all of them are outside, and they have really no influence, but they're trying to sort of call people to a general strike, which is in the union's view is absolutely wrong, because it's the second time they're trying to do that. First time it was done by Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who was the winning candidate at the last rigged election. And that was a complete massive failure, which only resulted in more people being thrown in jail. What we suspect is that the same thing is going to be happening tomorrow, because we tried to talk to them to help organize and basically say, look, that it has to come from the workers, not being directed from above by someone who has absolutely no idea what they're doing. But, well, the people from the opportunistic opposition, they go around the world, basically getting funds from whoever gives them, including Belarusian diasporas. So they probably promised more finance to the workers. last time they never kept the promise, but well, we'll see what happens this time. There's no indication that something else that will happen otherwise. REP will try to support workers as much as it can, mostly with help with legal aid. Again, we have quite a few lawyers who are currently working on a volunteering basis because we just unable to pay them. We try to induce dialogue between different fractions of worker movement in Belarus. Some are more amenable, some are just, they've been fully hostile, which is interesting because it shouldn't be like that. So that's all of the news so far. We're waiting what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't believe there will be a complete and total strike. Most likely it'll be the same thing, that maybe a few thousand people all over Belarus will strike, and those will be thrown in jails or forced to leave the country. And opportunities will get more funding and the workers will get more trouble. We're just hoping that that it will not end with another breaking and another wave of arrests in our union. So that's what it is, up to date.
Okay, Hannah, thanks very much for update on us. I didn't know about this new development. There is obviously, things.
It only developed basically a week ago,
okay.
as they do, as the sudden call to strike. But we try to let them understand that the strike is a long, if you want to do a general strike, it's a long preparation, including financial preparation. You need to work with everyone in every company, on every enterprise, so that there would be mass support. The workforce in Belarus is currently very disillusioned by all these attempts to basically make people rise and then betray them. I can't name it, I can't say otherwise. And all it does, in our view, is basically it damages the effort that the independent unions are making in uniting the Belarusian workforce.
Okay, I think we've got it. I mean, it's not often that you'll find trade unions reluctant to come out on general strike, but when you're regarded as cannon fodder, we had this in South Africa in the past. Sometimes when a leadership was in a difficult position or wanted to score a point, they'd call the workers out without any preparation whatsoever. It seems, though, that in Belarus, we've had this history of general strikes being called on the basis of promises being made that the workers will be paid if they come out on general strike. And of course, when the workers come out, suddenly there's no money and the workers are fired, and now they're struggling and they have to try and go to places like Poland.
Let's unite.
Okay.
We said to them, we said, let's unite, because there should be one core, one central leadership that would direct the strike if you want it to happen successfully. That this one mechanism and one mind on that. No, we want to be independent. Unions are so unions are they just so suspicious of everyone, and obviously they've been promised again. I think we don't know exactly, but we think they've been promised again, and it's just
okay.
There is no leadership and there is no preparation. Well, we'll see what this attempt will make.
Okay, Hannah. Well, look, thanks very much for those points. And if I could mention, we've done fairly extensive support from our WIN comrades in Britain. And Jimmy, you're welcome to come in, but could I ask Steve to come in first, just to give some idea about, the way in which the networks which he's helped set up and we're intersecting with, so that, to give Steve an opportunity to speak. Then I think I'll ask Jimmy to come in, and then Roger to explain, something of how we work. If you could, Steve, if you could come in, Yeah.
Thanks, thanks, David, and thanks for helping to organize this event today. I think what we are seeing is that all our struggles are really common. The fight against contract labor, the fight against privatization, growing union busting and repression on a global scale. And I think what we have to do, workers from around the world, different unions, different organizations, is come together, as a network to begin with, to fight internationally so we can back each other up. There's a lack of communication of these struggles. Even in the United States, where there's a labor strike wave that's growing in auto and miners all over the country, there are workers all over the countries who are striking. It's not being brought together because the union bureaucracy in the United States do not want a united front of all workers in the United States and internationally. So what we've been trying to work with, and I'm a member of the communication workers, a journalist, and I produce a radio show called Work Week, is to build an international labor media network and an international labor solidarity network. And there are many groups around the world that are trying to support and organize their struggles, but we're not bringing together workers worldwide to link up. And we're facing multinationals that are all linked up together. Amazon, FEDEX, all these multinationals are linked up organizationally, politically, and fighting workers globally. So we need to build that kind of international workers movement that can act together. And we're going to have a meeting next Sunday, actually, to talk about, an action network there, which is necessary. On the 11th of this month, Valerie Jefferson, who's the fired president of the New Orleans Transit Workers, is having a rally at New Orleans City Hall. And I put up her address, contact, but we need international solidarity. When workers in Belarus and Namibia have actions, we've got to link up internationally. So these struggles are seen as not just a struggle of the individual company, individual workers, but part of a global class struggle, which it is. So I think that this is a good start. We have to build on it, and all our issues are common. What American workers are facing now is the same as the workers in every country of the world. So that means the conditions for internationalism are growing. And let's build on it on a non-sectarian level where we can all work together internationally.
Steve, thanks so much. And can I thank you for helping bringing a number of people. I'm pleased to hear what's happened with Valerie. We had invited her to speak. No doubt she's very busy.
Unfortunately, she's going to church today.
I was going to avoid saying that, but
so what
she's been dying to get back to church. I didn't want to say that, but anyway, so we all have some other life apart from the union struggle. Although we give 99.9% to the struggle itself, so we'll give her 0.1% off for church today. Thanks, Steve. Look, Roger, I think would come in a little late and try and draw together some of their points. But I'd be very keen if Jimmy could come in and give something of an update of the work that you've been doing. Jimmy?
Okay, comrades. First of all, I'm Jimmy Kelly, and I'm a member of the Executive Council of Connect Trade Union in Ireland. Connect is an electrical and mechanical construction trade union, and it's also a member of the International of Electrical Unions, the Global Power Union Conference. The union that I'm a member of, I managed to get a proposal through the Executive Council to adopt REP and recognize it as a valid union that organizes electrical workers, and as such that it would be entitled to be a member of the Global Power Unions. That was accepted, and it was accepted by the leadership as well. And I then made appeals for financial and material support. We managed to get an amount of €2,000 allocated to be passed on to REP, and also managed to get 4 laptops, which were redundant for our purposes because they were upgrading their communication system, and the 4 machines which were working were sent through the supporters and friends of REP directly to the comrades, and we understand they're using them now. But the tragedy of it is that apart from those 4 second-hand computers, I'm not aware of any help anywhere from any of the so-called sister organizations or any of the international federations. Most trade unions seem to be of the opinion that we understand the issue, we understand the concern, but, and this is the but, we don't know how, and we don't want to give money or give support in situations where it's not clarified. Now, in the case of Connect, the position has been adopted, and the General Secretary has the endorsement of the executive on this one, that any monies that will be paid will only be paid through legitimate trade union contacts or trade union recognized organizations. But the simple thing there would have been to contact European Trade Union Conference and the Industrial, of which REP is a member already. Contacts with the European Trade Union Conference were not particularly successful because of the fact that some of the Stalinist organizations in Belarus have representation there. And there's also a certain element of Stalinist sympathizers in positions in the conference. There's also the question then, which is a valid one, but it's been hidden behind rather than being attempted to be overcome, is that the roles of the international congresses is to deal with other international congresses. And the National Congress in Belarus, as far as they're concerned, is hostile. And even though it's a member of the European Congress. So there's no movement there, but the movement is possible through Industrial. Now, recently, it appears that there may be a door opening, a chink, to get a legitimate method of passing money onto the comrades in Belarus through individuals in the Industrial bureaucracy. Now, I don't want to go beyond the detail of that without further consultation with Hannah, because I don't want to leave anybody exposed. But the tragedy of it is that in the past, people who have held positions, people who have written articles condemning the attacks, not just on Belarus, but specifically on REP, people who have called for and pledged support have done absolutely nothing. And as Hannah has said in another forum, they'll promise you everything except actual material and financial support. Now, it's a sad situation, but what I would ask comrades to do internationally, to put pressure onto particularly Industrial to move off the fence and set up structures that they can appeal to other federations and affiliations to collect money and collect material support and create a public wave of support, particularly for REP, because it's the most prominent, it's the union that's been battered into the ground while everybody else stands on the outside and looks on. So really, that's all I wanted to do, comrades. This is an appeal to get the doors open and ask the bureaucrats to either do the work or get out of the way and let somebody else do it. Thank you, comrades.
Jimmy, thanks so much for your points. Could I invite comrades to indicate by raising a hand? You go down to the bottom of the page with your indicator and it says reactions there. And then right at the bottom, it says raise hand, and please do that. I see Bob coming in. Let's pick up on some of the themes that have been raised. Joseph's raised the question of organizing stevedoring workers in South Africa and the various ports in Richards Bay and elsewhere. And let's see what connections we've got internationally with longshoremen, workers elsewhere, to indicate and give Retusa the support it needs. I'll ask also Roberta indicate in what way we could help and what really the priorities are there, so that you know the work which is going ahead there, fantastic work in relation to FEDEX is recognized. As usual, we have the issues of support in relation to the semi-legal work, semi-underground work, which is done by the unions in Belarus. And we tried to be practically involved in there. And Jimmy gave some of the details. Sometimes this is quite a job because you can get, you know, let's say a weak hand of handshake from the bureaucrats. Meanwhile, they do absolutely nothing to support workers' struggle, and they just, you know, stand back. Could I recognize the following people to come in? Bob, you're welcome to come in next, and then Silvana.
Yes, you're right to draw our attention to the main themes of the reports today. First of all, on the film that you showed at the beginning, I was present at all stages of those developments. There was a massive and spontaneous building workers' strike in 1971, which was a nationwide and really was the highest development of rank and file trade unionism in that post-war economic boom that did encourage that kind of action. The first comment on that is the layer of very active militant trade unionists is now enormously reduced, and the ones we saw correctly fighting for against the de-skilling and so forth are now quite a small proportion of the trade union movement, which itself is a very much smaller body of people than it was 40 years ago. So that's worth bearing in mind. It casts a light on this discussion because, of course, new detachments are coming into this from all over the place, and that's what's really inspiring about this. The themes that have come out: union busting, absolutely across the board; casualization, taking away people's employment rights, reducing their employment status, absolutely across the board; abuse of migrant workers, using migrant workers to undercut established populations, across the board. So the real problem of preventing the employers from exploiting splits in the working class. These are all huge political questions for us. And I think the question that became sharpest was, the question is not just setting up new rank and file trade unions, because those trade unions will face the same problems as every other trade union, that you need an effective leadership. And that leadership is more than just standing on a picket line. So it poses all sorts of political problems. That becomes clear from Jimmy's contribution. There are political forces that are against a radical revival of the working class. Some of them call themselves socialists. Some of them come out of the Communist Party. Not all of the ones that do that, by the way, are useless by a long chalk. So what we're very, I'm a member of Workers' International to rebuild the Fourth International. I agree that we're absolutely right to work on a non-sectarian basis, work with everybody, but we will always be pointing to the important political questions of development when we're working with all these groups of workers, and for whom we will bring the maximum support that we can.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Silvana, would you like to come in? Silvana is an activist from the PT, the Workers' Party in Brazil. If I could say, what we're working to, just briefly with this meeting, is to develop a focus on particular points at the moment. If you know, just the way I'm thinking, just let's debate that. I do think that the Namibian workers have been very isolated. They have suffered from extreme isolation from South Africa and the region in Africa and internationally. And I think it's a crying shame. When you read the reports of what's happening in Rossing Mine, it's absolutely astonishing the way in which unions are smashed, outsourcing has taken place, foreign nationals are brought in with cheaper conditions, cheap labor. and the labor courts are being controlled, by the ruling party to be able to put the workers in the eye, to put it plainly, and to make sure that every piece of legislation is not going to work in the interests of the workers. So that I do think it's focus like that is important, as well as Roberto's focus on FEDEX. I think we all know about FEDEX, and yet we don't understand yet, how effective, what an effective strategy could be to organize, the unorganized in that sector. Just briefly, we're also working to say that, we're wanting to build up networks. In the past, we've had official unions, which have been somewhat networked. From my experience in the past, we had a fantastic textile strike in the 1970s in South Africa. One of our officials picked up a phone and spoke to a Japanese union. And within a day, we had $32,000 come through to help Black workers in struggle in South Africa. $32,000, just like that on a phone call. That doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't happen. So we've got to rebuild and strengthen our rank and file initiatives and give support where we see unions taking initiatives, like we see there with Roberto, and we see particularly with JV, struggling to build and strengthen the unions in the most vulnerable workers, and to help build in that way. So we're working on networks, and then we need to get support. So comrades, if there's some particular point, like for instance, a request for a message of support, or a message against an employer, or against a labor lawyer who's or a judge or whatever, we need to know that. So we're a kind of clearinghouse, so that the workers can develop, the resistance in the way. In the past, we've seen international dock councils set up. We've had all kinds of initiatives, I know, in the 1970s and 80s. Unfortunately, all of those networks are somewhat in abeyance. I can't say they've gone forever. There's still some websites which show that, but let's see what we can build in networking among ourselves, and starting the process. Steve started many useful links, and we fully integrating that, I hope, and we can take forward the struggle in different ways. So comrades, please indicate. Otherwise, I'll ask just specifically on the points I've made. Maybe George, you could come back with, and to answer the question, in what way do you see international discussions and the discussions that we're having right now helping your work in relation to organizing the stevedoring workers in South Africa?
The biggest problems that workers face is mostly they are isolated from networks. So through this abuse and victimization, they are put in a corner where their struggles are kept to themselves. Now, it is up to us to expose and to get these workers to tell their story to the world, because we can only achieve success when we work as a united force, and when these stories are out to the world. So this is one of the points that we as workers are looking for: international solidarity, so that our stories can educate other workers in similar problems. That is the main reason. And again, when you look at fighting a corporate giant, fighting these big companies, their strategy mostly is to financially drain you, so that you give up on the fight. But we as an international force should implant that hope in the workers to let them continue fighting and not to give up. That is the message that we need to send out to the workers. I think when we have achieved that, the workers can start standing up for themselves. And I like what Comrade Steve said. these struggles are not just confined to a specific country. Everyone in the world is facing a struggle like this, whether it's union busting, whether it's contract labor. So we need to bring all these struggles together as one, so that we can achieve a working class movement that is very strong and united. I hope that answers your question correctly.
Yeah, thanks so much, George. Joseph, if you could come in with some additional points.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you loud and clear. We could see
Okay,
you, I
thanks.
think, if you click on the video. Yeah.
Okay, yes. Thank you, David, and thank you, comrades, in terms of their international struggles that is taking place. I think what is so much important is the unity of all the trade unions in terms of fighting the struggles of the rank and file. I think, David, what you are mentioning is so much important in terms of the struggles that was waged in South Africa in the 1980s, 1990s, where there was a lot of connection in terms of unions internationally, where if, like, for instance, the comrade in Namibia, South Africa, I think there should be a connection between South Africa and the comrades in Namibia, where the mine workers in Namibia, more especially National Union mine workers in South Africa, will just liaise with comrades, give them the support and so forth, phone the employers, write letters, write email and everything, actually to put pressure, to those particular employers. So the connection that has been done in terms of the international solidarity is very much important. I think there should be a lot of support, not only to write letters or email and so forth, and also the financial support. Was what we have seen in South Africa, and I think it's happening also in Namibia, is that the moment you take the big employers on, what they will do, they will just take you for a long haul so that you are drained financially up to the point that you just give up. And I think there's a strategy that employers are utilizing actually throughout the world, because they know that unions, small unions are financial themselves, they cannot get actually this financial support as they need and so forth. I think it's important that we liaise with each other, whether it's USA, whether it's in Europe, so that we give each other support in the way of writing to each other, sharing the experiences. Because what is important again is to share the experience, because you'll find that the experience unions in Europe that they are having, more especially in Britain, it's more advanced than the unions in Africa and so forth. So I think that much is important. Having actually raised, I think I've exhausted the point that I was just raising around stevedoring. But what we need actually to have in Retusa is to have this support in stevedoring, because you go to each and every country where there's a harbor, you will find stevedoring actually people. So I think what we need from the unions that we're connecting with them right now is to organize those workers as dock workers to belong to Retusa. Is for us also in South Africa to encourage workers, whether it's Baluras, whether it's in USA or anywhere, to join these workers that are still fighting the working class struggle. Because what we've seen right now, most unions, the reason why the federation like COSATU for Africa is like weak, because they've got so much connection with the party, which is the ANC. And we've seen that. In fact, at some point when we were addressed by one trade union from Namibia in COSATU level, they warned us as workers to say, workers should be independent from the ruling class, because there comes a time when a ruling party will deviate, from the agreement that we just agreed upon, when we're all struggling before freedom and democracy. And we've seen that in South Africa, where the ANC as a ruling party seem to be deviating some of the agreement that has been collectively agreed at the national level, especially in public sector unions, where there was a 3-year agreement, and the ruling party said no, because we are having some struggles financially and so forth, we are going to cancel that agreement just like that. So it's important also that unions should be dependent actually from the ruling party, because there comes a time where unions are being compromised, and workers will start actually to cast doubts in trade unions to say, what's the use of joining the trade union where they cannot give us what we want as the trade union, or deliver in terms of the resolution that has been agreed in different congresses. So that is important. I think it's also it's a lesson that I think we've learned in South Africa, because the industrial union, they seem to be neutralized or weak in one way or another, because the strategy that we've seen in South Africa, the industrial union are the one that will lead strike in the South as well, the NUM, the SACTU, the clothing and so forth. So I think we have to revive that strategy of the industrial union, because those unions are the ones that understand the real strategy of the working class. I think.
Okay, thanks. Thanks so much, Joseph. Just before Steve comes in, let me just mention this so that Steve will respond to it. Look, we're very keen to be able to establish a kind of ongoing communication and discussion with workers. And when we have our Sundays are sacred, in this sense, that we have a variety of political discussions, on theoretical and country-specific issues. So we tend to be very Sunday orientated. So if you could lay off the Sundays, we can then participate fully on other times. And then let's keep the ball in play, and let's, in this sense, and score many goals, and bring in workers from all sections. There are some sections which haven't come in. We're very keen to work with Valerie. If Valerie's getting a town hall meeting to be able to fight her case, well, we want to be there to support her to one victory after the other. Well, at the moment, we're not seeing victory after victory. We want, in the invitation, we said, let's see what we can do. If we can get the victories, minor or major, and we are then getting the workers on the track of building from below, and building with the unions, which are doing their job, as Retusa is doing. We give you all the support there, and actually building the ideas and the organizational skills of workers too, which are very important. So we've been very keen to help in all those ways. When you look at around, if I could say to Joseph and to George, you'll see some older faces, but many of those faces have got loads of experience. Some of them are not speaking right now because for what reason or other, but they have enormous experience, to pass on and to help and to advise, and any way, some very practical things, even like organizing picket lines and how to deal with certain legal issues. All of that, it's a stock and trade. That's here. Steve, would you like to come in now?
Yeah, I was going to say we have to link up around issues that we're all fighting similarly. For example, privatization. The capitalists globally are trying to sell out and privatize all public resources. And I know in San Francisco, the ILW, the Longshore, are fighting privatization of the Port of Oakland for a developer, a billionaire developer who was the A's ball team and Gap, to take over the port and build condos. Now, this is a global issue. At ports, in fact, in Durban, they're fighting privatization by Transnet. And privatization of public resources. So if we can link up the longshore workers fighting privatization of the ports globally and take up a fight, that's a concrete thing that we can work together on. and build solidarity and have direct links. Now, the great thing that we have is this medium that we're using today, Zoom. The first time in history for the working class of the world, we're able to directly communicate with each other. And Zoom is also going to have this coming year automatic translation. So we can have workers from throughout the world who don't necessarily speak English or Spanish communicate with each other. This is a great tool for the working class of the world that we can have direct links. So let's use that. The other thing is the multinationals, FedEx and Amazon is a global struggle against these companies. So we need to have support Roberto and the comrades in Italy with actions in other countries at FEDEX, have an international day of action against FedEx around the world where we link up together. The same with Uber and Lyft, these platforms that are killing workers and marginalizing workers. So we need to bring all these workers together so we can act collectively on a global level. And what we, one of the things is by having maybe a monthly action globally where we all work together, that might be a start of building direct international unity and getting our unions to say, we're going to support this. One is in the United States on the 11th, there's going to be a rally at the New Orleans City Hall to demand the rehiring of Valerie Jefferson, the fired head of the transit workers of New Orleans. We could have action, solidarity statements, I put it on the chat, for her, and demanding that she be rehired, they pay the hurricane hazard pay to these workers. If they get statements from unions all over the world and workers, that would be a tremendous lift. That would show there's international solidarity. Also, I understand on the 19th, there's going to be a national day of action in Namibia. One of the things about recolonization of Africa is that the corruption in the judicial system, and this is true in South Africa as well, means that workers can't get redress or adjudication in the judicial process in the labor courts. So the corruption prevents any kind of effort to, any kind of real rights in the labor courts. So this corruption now in Namibia is leading to a national movement of the fishermen, of all kinds of workers who are not getting redress in the courts, and the companies have control of the government and the court system, the judicial system. So there's going to be a national protest on the 19th. We should have actions worldwide to support the Namibian workers because it's not just in Namibia. This is going on globally. So we're going to be having another conference call on Saturday. And the last thing I want to say is when you have an action, a protest or a press conference, you should videotape it and put it on Facebook. We got to have a global broadcast. So when we have our actions and struggles, it goes out globally. And having a global labor channel that can bring together our struggles, it'd be very powerful. So workers see they're not isolated. They're not only there, they're everywhere because these issues are similar around the world. The last point I want to make is there's a struggle. There are many struggles in the United States, but one is the miners' struggle. The miners in Alabama have been out for more than 7 months, and they've been run over. A court just ruled that they cannot picket within 200 yards of the mine, which means they're going to bring in the scabs. So unfortunately, the union and the United Mine Workers has not sought international support. The coal is for steel is being shipped all over the world in many countries. There needs to be international support, but the union structure does not want internationalism because then they lose control of it. Yeah. What we want to build is internationalism that links up workers directly so workers have the power. I think that is our direction. That's where we have to go and link up with those workers who want to fight back and organize on a global level. Okay, Steve, just one quick point before I let Larry come in. Let's take this resolution in inverted commas. We've got the leader of Retusa here of the stevedoring workers. I know that you're in touch with our longshoremen in San Francisco and maybe in LA too. That's a really powerful union. Let's see if we can't get the workers together and discuss. And maybe if Joseph or JV, if you could maybe do some interview with 1 or 2 workers that we could put up, not necessarily on any specific thing, but on their struggle, just what the life is like. In other words, to greet workers. I think the big problem has been
the time difference, because it's almost, you have to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I think in San Francisco, if you're going to connect with South Africa before people go down. So let's, before they go to bed. So let's see how we can deal with the time differences and elsewhere. Maybe exchange videos is a good idea as well, to put up kind of ways of greeting other workers. Certainly, let's try and achieve that and the other things, but at least put that up, because that would be a very concrete achievement. Larry, I'm sorry to have been holding you back. Please come in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I couldn't agree more with some of the comments that Steve was saying about building international rank and file solidarity. Particularly, I was interested in the work that the Irish comrade was indicating from Dublin. Some of the points that I'd like to raise is that WIN has to enter the field of building that solidarity. One of the things that was eminent in the problem with Belarus is that we're relying upon the bureaucracy of the trade union movement to give international solidarity. And I think the area WIN can do is acting as a financial conduit for unofficial support of rank and file workers internationally. I mean, we did this, when I say we, I mean, there was a group of us in the News International dispute that worked beyond the realms of and the limitations of the bureaucracy within the fight against Murdoch. And that was, we went out and we campaigned on a national level, not international to a great degree, of speaking to trades councils, speaking to other trade unionists, and raising funds directly and organising those funds indirectly through the rank and file movement, so that we could produce our own leaflets, produce our own international or national solidarity. We built up support groups on a borough by borough basis within London and nationally, with comrades on a non-sectarian basis. And I think these are the elements that certainly I could get involved with, in raising the issue of the Belarus rep problems there. But we need to be able to identify. I'm a member of Unite, and we've given solidarity contributions, financial contributions to a number of organisations. And if WIN was to say, yes, we would act as a conduit for financial support to places like Belarus and REP, I'll be able to make that appeal to our own branch for financial support, as well as political and moral support as well. But we need to be able to give a credible conduit in this country to support internationally. That's the points I was going to try and make. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, Larry, fantastic. I'm so pleased to hear the idea and the commitment there. Often to get money to travel from one worker organization to another workers organization takes heaven and earth.
Yes.
They want to know exactly who's who and what's going on. Now, we know that there can be ups and downs and people can misspend, but absolutely, we've not seen this happen in any of the engagements I've been involved in. In fact, scrupulous attention to finance. But you wonder, well, what's a problem? But let's take up the idea. It'd be marvelous. I'm sure Jimmy could help, and that certainly Hannah would want to be in touch with you and put down everything that you've offered. Dave, please come in.
I think what we need to strengthen our movement, the working class movement and the trade unions, is a thorough and ongoing analysis of trade unions in each of our nations to assess to what degree they are partnership unions or worse, such examples in Belarus where the majority unions are yellow unions, they're part of the state. And I think the same goes for countries like the UK where I'm based. there are some unions that are thoroughly in bed with the bosses, and I would categorize Unison up to very recently as one such example. When I was a member of Unison, they were systematically attacking any left-wing branch-led union by taking legal action against them, or coming in, taking over the branch and running it by having regional bureaucrats in there. And that personally happened to me. But I think the level of partnership varies from country to country. We've had German trade unionists here speaking, and they talk about workers' council. And I remember saying, well, there's a big issue. On the one hand, it appears as though workers have more influence in workers' councils, but the German comrade who replied to that said, yeah, it tends to be a very bureaucratic thing that doesn't really involve the workers. And I think the level of partnership of any individual union should be thoroughly looked at, so that we impart to the working class which are the unions that are worth belonging to and which are the ones that are not worth belonging to. And I think this is really a key question, because and I think that these smaller unions, like the one that Roberto mentioned, C. Corvas, that started with 100 people, a more rank and file, militant orientated, strike orientated union, is a model to follow, and that we shouldn't be dismissive of those because they're not part of any official union movement that's been going for 100 years, because many of those old unions tend to be more and more become bureaucratized and further away from their members. And what we should say, we should be open to the fact that people can belong to either new militant unions. In the UK we have the UVW and the IWGB that are trying to organise precarious workers. Well, these are really important movements, because what they do is they push the existing unions to say, well, these are making inroads now, maybe we should be organising these precarious workers as well. And some of them do. Unite has done that, and so has the Bakers Union. Unfortunately, I think they give up after a while because they don't see it as something that should be carried through. So, but I think when I say analyse the union movement internationally, a very good example is found in this book, Workers' Inquiry and Global Class Struggle, which I'm reading at the moment. And I'd like to read just a couple of lines from here because I think it's crucial. It gives the example of the mining workers in South Africa who came into struggle from 2009. In 2009, the frustration that workers, and in particular labour broker, contract and outsourced workers had been feeling towards unions, and the close relationship many had with corporations, began to break out into rebellion in the country's platinum mines. So these workers are precarious in the mines, and they're frustrated by the role of the unions, who set up 5-year deals and they negotiate maybe a fairly low percentage increase over a 5-year period. And the workers based in the mine said, enough is enough, we're not having that. And they started to organise outside of the unions. There were 6 underground sittings, occupations and wildcat strikes in various mines between 2009 and 2011. And then in 2012, the platinum mine workers strike began in the Impala platinum mine, and the NUM, the official union, condemned the workers' wildcat strike, and as a consequence it lost the vast majority of its members at that Impala mine after 11,000 workers resigned from that union by March the 31st. So it shows that where the workers start to take their destiny into their own hands and challenge their unions and have a perspective about the struggle itself as important, then they throw aside those official unions. Now, I'm not going to read out any more, but basically the state, the official unions joined together with the state, and they brought the police and the army in, and in the Maracana mine, 34 miners were shot. That didn't end the struggle. The struggle continued, and with unofficial national network was formed with political organisations, but eventually the miners went back to work after winning concessions, you know, much higher wages. So I think it's really important to point to struggles like that in South Africa. In different parts of the world, the level of oppression will be higher, such as in Belarus, where they're arresting trade unions and breaking into union offices. And in the UK, where I am, that level of repression will be a lot lower, the exception being such as the miners' strike, where we saw the forces of the state come in to crush the miners, and every resource they could, short of killing miners, was used. So I think we have to be open to that. We have to have a thorough and ongoing analysis of unions in each of our countries, and we should encourage new forms of organisations and put forward the role of official unions and say how they are often a barrier to the working class. Now, why is that important? It's because we know that all across the world, capitalism is making work more precarious. They're attacking existing wages and conditions, and that's going across the world. I remember about 10 years ago seeing a program about American airline pilots. Now, most people will think airline pilots, highly skilled workers, and this program was saying that many of them, a high proportion, were living in trailer parks because their money was being driven down by capitalist competition between airlines. Now, you wouldn't expect that. And in this country, education workers in further education, 50% don't have permanent contracts, highly educated workers. So these, what you might call middle class, more privileged workers, are being driven down into the working class. And one of the earlier comrades mentioned slavery. Well, it's wage slavery, and that's what we're being driven to. So I agree that we need more unofficial international networks of workers, but we need to put forward a very clear analysis of the role of official unions, bureaucracy. Don't just use terms like the bureaucracy, but explain how they will work with the state and with the companies and with the corporations, how they're internationalized, and how the workers also need to have their own forms of struggle and to organize internationally.
Dave, thanks so much. Roberta, please come in.
Yes, I wanted to say that, well, I agree with Dave, what Dave said about official unions, and it's a big problem we are also facing, because we know that unless the movement in Italy spreads to a much larger section of the working class, will be crushed, because repression is increasing the last years and months, and well, we cannot stand against with the few tens of thousands workers. We cannot stand against the military and also all the branches, judicial powers of the state. Almost every picket is being attacked by police, and so this is, I sent today an example of the struggle of workers who have been fired because of union busting policy of another company, and the police is continually intervening. So I think that the problem, but we have the problem, will the workers who now are members of the official unions break with them? Will they decide to strike? Well, it does not wholly depend on us. We don't think that our perspective is just to widen our union and have it conquer all the working class. No, there'll need to be the millions of workers to break with the policies of their unions, which are supporting the companies and the state, which represents capitalists. So, but it does not fully depend on us, but we have to move in a way that is against sectarianism, also on a political level, I think, because what can unite us internationally is, first of all, being against the capitalist system and to join working class forces, to unite the working class forces that are against the capitalist system. Unless you have this clear position, then all union work on the economic field, well, Rosa Luxemburg said it is a Sisyphus job. You win, but then the policy of the bosses, but also the mechanism of capitalism will push you back, because if your wages go beyond a certain level, they won't be competitive and they will close or move the capital elsewhere. So
sorry, I'm sorry. We really are down to the last word. I appreciate the points, and let's keep further in touch on all of those issues. I just want to, if possible, give Hannah to just have a last word, and then to to move on to Roger winding up this discussion. I'm sorry for that, Roberta. Hannah, please come in.
From what I've heard from comrades, it is very important for us to unite, and that it's true that the larger the movement, the more we can actually achieve. It's the problems of mutual trust, I think. That's one of the issues that is making things worse and making things not as easily achievable. So that I think we need to overcome. We are trying, and yes, I do agree with Bob, for example, in terms that we have to go beyond the sectoral limits. And we're actually trying to do that. I mean, REP is now, we work with anybody who comes. We actually have quite a few white collar workers right now, and people are coming in groups because they are so disillusioned in the official unions that they see no other opportunity but just to come to REP. And I mean, comrades, it means deal with them all the time. You know, doctors groups coming in, or IT groups coming in, and they are like, I'll fight for invasion.
Well, look, I think we might have to stop there. I think it's Junior there called Dina who's wanting to contribute. Look, Hannah, I think we'd say that that's it, mainly because time is the enemy, as they say. Roger, Hannah, I'm just saying that please let's, we are a little over time now. So let's just see if you can follow up with Larry. That is so marvelous to have a concrete offer, and let's work away. A lot of the work we do is attention to detail. So let's just try and work that out. And Larry, thanks so much. Roger, could you make some closing remarks, particularly in relation to what is when and how do we work?
Yes, thank you, comrades. It's been a really inspiring meeting. I particularly would like to take up the point that Roberto made a little earlier. This meeting has been a truly international meeting, a truly democratic forum. I think all the comrades would agree. We've had, from what I can count, we had at least 12 countries represented. We've had, reports from South Africa, Belarus, USA, Italy, and other countries too. And this is the kind of discussion which is absolutely vital to the future of the working class internationally, and it always has been, and it's always been the aspiration of worker militants to build a real international movement, an international body. From the time of Marx and Engels onwards, for nearly 200 years, that's been the aspiration. Now, there are many groups which know that, and I'm sure we've all come in contact with them. I certainly, for one, had a long experience with one of them, and so on. There are many groups that are trying to do that, but the problem is that many of them think that the way to build an international movement is from the top down. And there are historical reasons, maybe, but it's the wrong way round. We do not want to operate like generals without an army. On the contrary, what we need to do is not to consider ourselves to be teachers so much as learners, and learn from one another's experience. And WIN is based on starting as a mere network where we learn from one another and try to organize solidarity with one another, and try to discuss together the lessons of the common struggles of workers around the world, both contemporarily and historically. And I believe that if Marx or Engels or Lenin or Trotsky were alive today, one of the main tools that they would use is Zoom. And we're enormously privileged and lucky that we have that means of instant communication and equal participation from comrades around the world. And so, this is what we're trying to do. We really welcome the participation of new comrades almost every week. And we're particularly glad to welcome Comrade Roberto, among others. We meet weekly. We have open democratic discussions. We exchange experiences of the struggles we're involved in now, but also historical and theoretical questions. Next week, for instance, we have the world's leading Marxist economist, Michael Roberts, is going to explain to us about the prospect of inflation in the immediate period ahead, and what that will mean for the struggles of workers internationally. We have reports on all of these kind of issues, and together, this is the way in which we think we're really building something of substance. So I don't know if that quite answers your question, Roberto, but I hope that we'll exchange experiences and exchange ideas, both in these meetings and perhaps bilaterally. I would say I really welcome the participation of all the comrades for that. See you next week.
Let me say that in conclusion, we could be seeing a growth of a strike wave nationally in the US, in Europe, and even in Africa with South African engineering workers. And we need to be prepared to have all the ideas, the techniques, and the networks that will take worker solidarity forward and bring victories to the working class internationally. Amandla, comrades. Stay well, work hard, and struggle. Bye, bye for now.
Forward and onward.